All the scenes where we get of the male actors showing their booty cheeks, if it was real to life, we would see poop streaks. Yes, I am very dressed up. Unfortunately, we have no time to waste with this kind of video. So, as a lot of you may or may not know, the newest season of Bridgerton dropped in May. It was split into part 1 and part 2. Part 2, which dropped this past Thursday, June 13th. Now, if you don't know, Bridgerton, the Netflix series, is actually a film adaptation of Bridgerton, the books. But it essentially follows the Bridgerton family as all the children grow up and get married. So the book series is incredibly popular, so they made it into a Netflix show. Now, season 3, which was a very highly anticipated season because it followed one fan favorite couple, which is Pauline, aka Penelope Featherington, and Colin Bridgerton. So each season follows a specific couple, although in this season we got a little bit of another couple, that being a younger Bridgerton girl. Her name is Francesca, and her love interest, Lord Kilmartin. Although, minor spoilers if you have not read Bridgerton or have not seen the show. So if you don't want to know, I would suggest clicking off the video and or skipping to some of my more actually, the whole thing is a spoiler. I take it back. There's no safe place for you here. These are specifically going to be spoilers on the Francesca story, that being in the book, it's When He Was Wicked. So if you don't want to know, if you want to read the book or you want to be surprised when the season comes out, I would suggest skipping this whole video because it's going to be all about that. In season 3, Francesca eventually gets married to her love interest being John Kilmartin. But in the books, that's not actually her final love interest. So in Francesca's love story, When He Was Wicked, her husband, John Kilmartin, actually dies, and her new love interest is actually his cousin. So Michael Sterling is the cousin of John Kilmartin, and in the book, When He Was Wicked, it's about their love story, how they essentially come together after him wanting to be with her for years and years and years, his like unrequited pining for her, and her kind of like coming to terms with, you know, I'm a widow, I'm still young, and I want things for my future, for my life, so I'm going to do the things that makes me happy. Great, wonderful. If you did not know, right now, Twitter is in a frenzy because in season 3 of Bridgerton, again, this is supposed to be on Penelope and Colin. Francesca is like kind of like the side, if you will. She's not the main focus of this season. However, in the last episode of part 2, again, which aired just recently, we see Francesca, Eloise, John Kilmartin all together in one room at the last ball of the season. And we also get a surprise introduction to Francesca's future romantic interest. However, as I just mentioned, her final love interest is meant to be Michael Sterling. But in the show, we are introduced to one Michaela Sterling. Yes, you heard me right. The Bridgerton showrunners decided to gender bend the character of Michael Sterling, and everyone's upset about it. What we are talking about is this one tweet that really sparked my interest and really pushed me to make this video, and I will read the tweet as follows. So they scrapped Michael Sterling, aka the best Bridgerton man, and Francesca struggles with infertility for some diversity. A lot of people had a lot to say about this decision by the showrunners, and today we're going to talk about why people are actually mad about it and if anyone has any right to be. So I'm just gonna say, you know, it's June. These tweets could have waited to July. It is Pride Month. Need I remind everyone? Some wild tweets to be making in the month of June. So first, I'm going to be going over the super real, very real critiques about why Michael Sterling can't be gender bent as a character. The fact that I had to read When He Was Wicked and go through the whole show, not even enjoy it in the way I was meant to, just so that I can watch a like less than 10-second clip of Michaela Sterling come up on screen is ridiculous. I'm just gonna say that right now. But, you know, I wanted to entertain the idea that some of these criticisms were coming from a good place and were coming from genuine literary analysis. But alas, they didn't. People were bringing up under the comments of this tweet and in a few other tweets that I was seeing that one of Francesca's main driving kind of character traits is that she struggles with infertility. Her character arc throughout the book is that she really wants to have children, but she is unable to. So let's talk about that first. So when the book starts, she is still married to John. He is still alive. And yet that same day when the book starts, he dies. Okay. Another important kind of like conflict in the stories as well as the series is the line of succession. So let's kind of get into that just a little bit. So all like the like love interests, this like, you know, contained story, this family, it's all titled people in Britain, right? So the Bridgertons are led by the Viscount Bridgerton, which is currently Anthony. His sister Daphne is a duchess. There's Lord. So like they all have titles, right? They're not just like regular people. They have titles, and a lot of the conflicts surround maintaining those titles. In the Regency era, the only way you could maintain a title throughout the family was through male succession, that being that the eldest son would always inherit the title after the father passes away. And if not the eldest son, then the next son or the next son, it would always go to a man. A woman could not inherit a title. That is important to mention. So at least as far as I could tell, the British monarchy does follow like not specific to regular people rules of succession, that being that women can inherit the title. However, right now we're focusing on just the regular people. Okay, so after John Kilmartin dies, his cousin, that being Michael Sterling, then inherits the title of Lord Kilmartin. However, he doesn't immediately inherit the title as Lord Kilmartin because Francesca finds out that she's pregnant shortly after John dies. But very sadly, she miscarries and loses the baby. 4 years after John dies, Michael Sterling has inherited the title. He is Lord Kilmartin. Francesca is widowed, but she is out of her period of mourning because she very desperately wants to have children. She feels that she is incomplete without being a mother, which is fine. I'm not here to pass judgment on that. I mean, children bring a lot of joy, fun, happiness, and good times. So there's nothing wrong with her wanting to have children or feeling that her life is somehow incomplete by not having them. I'm not here to pass any judgment on that. But throughout the book, she has struggles with infertility, specifically after she becomes intimate with Michael Sterling, aka Lord Kilmartin, the new Lord Kilmartin. They are being intimate with each other, but she is still unable to get pregnant. Francesca also says that she kind of fears that she might actually be infertile because it took her 2 years after being married to John to actually conceive, and then she quickly lost that baby. So she's afraid that she might not even be able to have children. So that's something that also goes into her character in the books. So people were saying that plot line, that whole character arc that she has as she struggles with her infertility would be thrown away if Michael Sterling is Michaela Sterling. I will acknowledge that yes, that is an important part of her character, that she wants to have children and that she makes a lot of decisions in the story based on this desire to have children. So I'm not going to say that that is a ridiculous claim, okay? I acknowledge that that's important to her character. However, I think it's so funny, like literally running face first into the point and still missing it kind of funny, that people are saying that she can't have those struggles in a lesbian relationship. Call me crazy, call me stupid, but can you imagine what struggles two people might face when they don't have the mechanisms to create life? Can you guess what two people that share the exact same anatomy can't do? A great example, and I know it's a modern example and we're talking about the Regency era, a great modern day example is this TikTok couple that I've seen on my For You page plenty of times where they talk about their struggles with infertility in a lesbian relationship. They go through all the modern day, IVF and I don't know what those little shots are, but those little shots, right? That is also a struggle with infertility. And I will also say that it is important to have these kinds of storylines that depict struggles with infertility because it is something that can be seen as like a taboo, something that's not really talked about very frequently in the media, and especially the pressure on women during the Regency era as well as modern day times to conceive. So yes, it's an important plot line, but it's not one that can't be adapted to a lesbian relationship. So let's immediately throw that out right now. That's not a valid criticism. They can still maintain an infertility plot line if Michael Sterling is a woman. What I didn't see a lot of people talking about, and what I think is actually a more substantial counter argument, has to do with the lines of succession. So I will talk about that because, you can't have a good argument if you don't also entertain good counter arguments. And here is a great counter argument that I think a lot of people haven't really been talking about. When we meet Michael Sterling, he immediately says that he's not really someone that wanted to inherit the Kilmartin name. He didn't want to be a lord. He didn't really want all that stuff, but he talks about how it's inherently affected his life because he didn't inherit the title. And at first he's okay with it. He's like, I've never been that kind of person. I'm okay with not having that kind of power. But after John dies and Francesca eventually miscarries, he has to take on that role and that responsibility. And he talks about very frequently, and I think it's important to his character, that he essentially has this power thrust onto him, and it's not something that he ever wanted to. And he really struggles because simultaneously he's essentially stepping into the role of his cousin. He has to take over as the new Lord Kilmartin, and he can't properly grieve the loss of his cousin. He feels some kind of guilt as to inheriting all of his things and simultaneously feeling love for Francesca. He consistently says through the beginning that that is the one thing he won't allow himself. He's already taken his name, his home, his everything. He can't also have Francesca. He feels so much guilt about wanting her and about essentially stepping into his shoes. And it's also mentioned literally in the story. He has kind of like almost a panic attack, if you will, about wearing John's boots because it's too literal. It's too in his face that he is essentially stepping into his shoes and taking over his life. And he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to erase John in any way. That is important to his character. Now, what I foresee as an issue that might have to be confronted by the showrunners and in the story is that plot line only happens because Francesca does not have a son. If she had a son, he would be the new Lord Kilmartin. In the series, because Michaela is a woman, she can't inherit the Kilmartin title. She cannot be Lady Kilmartin because, as I mentioned earlier, the way that succession works, women cannot inherit any specific titles. They can marry into them, as we see with Kate when she marries Antony and becomes the new Viscountess. But for example, if Antony, Colin, Benedict, and what's the last kid's name? Gregory, if they didn't exist, Daphne, for example, could not be Viscountess Bridgerton. That just wouldn't work. It would then go to one of their male relatives, like a distant cousin or something. It could not go to a woman. So if the series is to follow the exact plot line of the book, Michaela Sterling could not inherit the title of Lady Kilmartin. It just wouldn't work. If John dies, and again, Francesca doesn't have a son, it would not go to her. And they talk about it in the book, actually, that if Michael Sterling did not take the Kilmartin name, it would have gone to one of their distant family members that they're kind of ew, gross, we don't like them. So that is something that I do foresee as an issue, or rather something that will need to be addressed in the series. Although I don't think it's going to be hard or nearly as impossible as people might think it would be, because we've already seen something of a solution to that problem in season 3, and that being with the Featheringtons. So let's talk about it. So in season 2, their cousin Jack Featherington was the new Lord Featherington, right? Okay, so he inherited that title, but he was kind of a scam artist. They chased him out of town, and the Lady Featherington, that being the mother of Penelope, I'm so sorry, I forget their names, Philippa and the other one, I'm so sorry, girl. So at the start of season 3, we find out that Lady Featherington has actually forged some documents from Jack Featherington saying that he will pass on the title of Lord Featherington to one of the children of the daughters as long as they have a son. So at the start of season 3, Philippa and Prudence are both married, so they spend that season trying to get pregnant and trying to have a son so that they can keep the title, as opposed to going to one of their cousins or just some other random person. So I could very easily see something like that happening with the Kilmartin title. The same thing could easily happen in a genderbend scenario with Michaela, where there's some kind of document saying that if she gets married and if she has a son, that the title of Lord Kilmartin would be passed down to her son, which could also contribute to the conflict of the story, as I mentioned in the book, where John and Francesca are both in the marriage mart, and they're both kind of like the eligible bachelor and bachelorettes of the season. And I think it could also be interesting in the show if they do it this way, because then we would essentially like be seeing them as like romantic rivals in a kind of way, where they're both trying to find eligible husbands and yet at the same time equally pining after each other. So I think that would be really interesting. And again, I think that is a very easy solution to the problem with the succession, or altogether, I mean, it is an adaptation, so it's not always going to follow closely to the letter of the book series. I think they could very easily find a way around it. And in some interviews with the showrunners that I've seen, they talked about how the story was going to end, like it was going to be a happy ending for them. It was going to be a queer love story instead of a queer trauma story. So I can very easily see them just kind of scrapping that. I could very easily see them like by the end of the series not really having that be much of importance, that Michaela does not inherit the title, or that she kind of rejects her duties to produce an heir so that she can be with Francesca and that they can be in love and together and happy. I also think, as much as I say that this is a good counter argument, I also don't think it is, because literally the minute that Michael Sterling and Francesca get together, he immediately forgets. There's literally a passage in the book where he says that like, oh, any guilt that he had about wanting Francesca immediately disappeared the minute he got a taste of her. So it doesn't really come up as often after the fact. So as much as it is important for his character development in the beginning, it's kind of dropped the minute it starts getting steamy with them. So I don't think it would really be of much importance to the series if they decided not to continue with that. But overall, a general kind of criticism that people have for the show for making Michael into Michaela is that whatever, the events of the book could not follow in the same way if Michael is a woman. And I'm here to tell you that's absolutely wrong. Like, there's so many tropes, like romance tropes that happen in the story with Francesca and Michael that could still easily happen with Michaela Sterling. I'll give some examples right now. There's also a scene between Michael and Francesca in the book that really it really gets the gears rolling towards their like climactic parts of the book, where they realize they have feelings for each other and start being more intimate with each other. And that is when Francesca is talking with this one dude. I don't care to remember his name. He's an asshole. Anyway, Francesca and him go out into the gardens. He starts forcibly kissing her, and Michael is eavesdropping on her without her knowledge. And when he hears her kind of like struggle and say like, stop, no, he immediately rushes in, knocks the dude out, like is borderline, like almost ends him. He ends his season. He's like, you need to leave town. That could very easily happen with Michaela, as we've already seen in the series, because in season 1, Daphne and Nigel are in a very similar position where he is trying to be really forward with her and is trying to, take advantage of a lonely girl in the garden. And Simon sees this happening and he immediately rushes in to help her, and Daphne punches the shit out of him, gives him the most ugliest black eye I've ever seen in television, and she did it by herself. So that could very easily happen with Michaela Sterling. She could very easily come to Francesca's aid, and the same thing could still be accomplished. Any scene in this story could still be replicated with a woman. Literally nothing is jeopardized by having Michael as a woman. Which leads into my next question. If everything in the book could very easily be replicated with a female love interest instead of a male love interest, then why are people actually mad about Michaela Sterling in the series? Sometimes the best solution is the easiest solution, and that being that the reason people are upset is because they're women. Funny enough, I did want to make a video talking about the overtaking of spicy content in book talk, booktube, and general book spaces, and how books like Bridgerton, Colleen Hoover, Icebreaker, if you've heard of that, things like that have really overtaken the book spaces, and why I think that is happening. And that's kind of going to go into this video, so we're going to go just a little bit into it. Okay, the book series and the television series of Bridgerton specifically cater to a female audience. They cater to the female gaze, and And the female gaze, if you don't know, so the female gaze in media talks about how specifically men are portrayed, or rather love interests are portrayed to specifically cater to what women find attractive or appealing, whereas the male gaze appeals to what men think is attractive. So that being like the mechanic girl wearing booty shorts and saying your carbonara is in retrospect, I don't know. Shows like Bridgerton or other things that might appeal to a female gaze, more focused on like an emotional aspect, more focused on specifically female pleasure. Shows like Bridgerton allow women to project themselves onto the female characters and kind of live out a fantasy, for a lack of a better term, which there's nothing necessarily wrong with having media and content that caters to that desire and need, because as we know, things like female pleasure are often very heavily stigmatized in media. I specifically remember, I don't know why, but at one point in time, I was watching The Sopranos. I specifically remember that there's an episode of The Sopranos. This whole episode centers around these guys finding out that one of their friends enjoys giving oral pleasure to women, and it's like a scandal, and the women in the series are like, oh well, like, why are you being all weird about it, like, you do it. And I remember the main dude is like, okay, it's like once a year and we don't talk about it, okay, like, and it's just very heavily stigmatized, and it seemed as almost emasculating for men to do this. I don't know what year The Sopranos came out, but I mean, like, just to see that in media is already, like, again, contributes to the overall idea that women's pleasure is very heavily stigmatized, and it's not shown very often in media. And, you know, for some real world applications, when we exist in a beautiful time and age of the internet where we get wedding vows of a man that didn't prepare literally anything and just said, I vow to slap that ass every time I get, you know, perhaps people might appeal more to shows like Bridgerton when we have reality that looks like that. Especially again with the internet, where we're seeing a rise in women in heterosexual relationships talk more about things like weaponized incompetence, general lack of commitment, and just issues that they face in their relationships. So it's not crazy to say that people might want to appeal more to this fantasy where you have people like Anthony Bridgerton, Colin, and all these men make their like fantastical poetic declarations of love. I mean, who could forget the iconic King George saying, I love you from the moment I saw you climb over the wall. I have loved you desperately. I cannot breathe when you are not near, Charlotte. I love you. My heart calls your name. Truly, you could never get that kind of declaration in the real world, I'm so sorry to say. So again, in the Bridgerton series with Queen Charlotte, Daphne, Pauline, Anthony, and Kate, all those examples are ways that the female audience can project themselves onto the female characters in those relationships, and they can fantasize about having the men in those scenarios make those declarations of love to them, and they'll do other things. Again, I'm not here to stigmatize that. However, with Michaela Sterling being the new love interest for Francesca, people are upset because these women that are predominantly cis-het women cannot project themselves onto Francesca if her love interest is a woman. They are able to project themselves into these heterosexual couples, but they can't do it in a lesbian couple. And it's so interesting that this conversation is happening because simultaneously, I was also seeing a lot of tweets from people saying that they were okay with characters like Benedict and Eloise being gay, but they weren't okay with Francesca. Hold on, I think I found like a great tweet. It was so like tone deaf and awful. We had people saying, I smelled gay vibes from Eloise and Benedict, but not Francesca. What the fuck? Anyway, not watching anymore. Literally could have been Benedict or Eloise. I'm a Philoise fan, but I wouldn't mind if they changed her books and made her gay. But Francesca? So why are these people okay with Eloise Bridgerton and Benedict Bridgerton being gay, but not Francesca? So again, also in season 3, Benedict is confirmed by in the series because he has a threesome with a woman named Lady Arnold and her friend Paul, which again, I think there's a conversation to be had about perpetuating certain stereotypes when it comes to bisexual characters and threesomes. Because for for me personally, it doesn't really feel great. If I don't see Benedict and Paul go on a date with each other, it could very easily be misconstrued as something that is specifically done for women's pleasure. And I that doesn't sit well with me personally, because what we see with gay relationships between men on screen is that it still appeals to a predominantly female audience because of the fetishization of boy love, where oftentimes boy love, as you know, BL for short, how it's portrayed in media still perpetuates heteronormative ideas where someone is like very masculine, buff, tall, built, and the other man in the relationship is small, petite, and very unexperienced. You know, the top-bottom dynamic. It heavily perpetuates what heteronormatives believe is a gay relationship, that there is a feminine person in the relationship and a masculine person in the relationship. So I actually found an academic article I know I had to read about the fetishization of boy love, and in this specific section they talk about what they call the fetishizer exemplar. So in this study, this person talked to many types of people that consumed boy love content, and this is what they had to say. The fetishizer exemplar was something to be resisted. No one wanted to be accused of being a fetishizer. 2/3 of respondents used the term fetishization and fetishizer during the interviews. But what was fetishization? I really can't say that word. There seemed to be agreement among the BL fans in the study about who classified as a fetishizer. She was a wicked, heterosexual woman who preyed on and exploited gay men's sexuality. They only consumed this media because they wanted to see two men have sex. The wicked fetishizer did not value the media, storylines, or characters. Instead, BL was masturbatory source material. This view that gay men were only sexual objects for the fetishizer's consumption served to alienate the gay characters in BL from their storylines. So what this person is essentially saying is that there is an audience of people that consume BL content that only do so that they can enjoy, for lack of a better term, the more intimate scenes that come with BL storylines. That they don't actually value the characters or their storylines, their struggles. They're not watching Corn for the plot. They're just watching it so that they can enjoy the more intimate scenes, so they can see them kissing and do things like that. And it's more seen as masturbatory content, which again I fear is what they kind of did with Benedict's storyline by having him in a threesome. We never see him explore his sexuality by spending time with men in a way that is more romantic versus platonic. If we don't see him go on a date with Paul, I'm going to be very upset. He should go on a date with Paul. And even in the scenario where Benedict is having a threesome, the female audience can still project themselves onto the woman in that scenario, that being Lady Arnold. And it's much easier for these women to project themselves into the scenario because it's two men versus it being two women and a man. So more people are okay with him being bi for multiple reasons. One being that, again, as I mentioned, gay men are typically very fetishized in media, especially in media that is directed towards a predominantly cishet audience. And because he's bi, I think a lot of women could very easily say like, okay, well, he still likes women. He could still end up marrying a woman. Just because he has an attraction for men doesn't mean that he will end up with another man. As for Eloise, I think people are also okay with her being gay because, as I've seen, okay, so I have not read the book, but Eloise's romance plays out by her essentially being a live-in nanny for a man and then falling in love with him, which a lot of people didn't necessarily take too kindly to because she is portrayed as kind of like a girl boss queen slay character that doesn't need a man. She is the modern day feminist of the Bridgerton family. So to see her character be reduced to a live-in nanny and the object of desire for a man is not something that a lot of people liked or really wanted for her character. So they're okay with her being gay in the series because essentially, like, I think a lot of people might have seen that her storyline and her character was kind of wasted already with Sir Philip. So we're okay with this kind of departure from the source material because a lot of people didn't really like her storyline anyway. And again, she's seen as the more modern day character. She's a feminist. It's easier inherently for her story to be changed. I think people also see Eloise's character as one that's not necessarily meant to be sexualized, especially considering the series. Again, I know that in the books she does have a romantic interest, she does eventually end up getting married, and she does have a sexual relationship in the books. But I think in the series, because her character is seen as more of like a sleuth, like very independent, very three-dimensional in the sense that she exists outside of wanting a husband or wanting to get married, I think people are more willing to accept her as a lesbian woman versus Francesca. Because Eloise's love story in the books isn't super popular. Not a lot of people really liked what happened with her character, so people are more willing to see changes happen to her story. But for Francesca, people were really into Michael Sterling, and I can't even begin to imagine why. I read the book. That man, if he approached me, I would tase him. I would rather be in the pen with a polar bear at the zoo than be in the same room with Michael Sterling. That man is a red flag, to say the least. Again, their relationship is supposed to be one that women are supposed to project themselves onto, and they can't do it if she's in a lesbian relationship because they don't like women, which is fine. You don't have to like women. You don't have to be sexually attracted to women. There's nothing wrong with that. There is something wrong with it when we can't even allow these relationships to exist in media. And I think simultaneously, the reason why people are mad is, again, because they can't project themselves onto Francesca and because they can't hypersexualize another man in this series. I have to bring attention to the fact that a lot of the men, that being fictional in the books as well as the actors in the series, are hypersexualized to a way you could not even begin to imagine. For example, when the actor for Lord Kilmartin was introduced to the series, a lot of people said he wasn't handsome enough to be John Kilmartin, which you could really argue is probably rooted in racism. I don't think we're ready to have the conversation yet. People even said that the actor that plays Sir Philip Crane in the series, again, that man makes a cameo for all of like 5 minutes. They said that he was too scrawny to be Sir Philip because in the book he is described as a hulking man, and they said he was too puny. There was a lot of tweets that were even like not trying to hide the fact that the reason they were so upset is because Michael Sterling is supposed to be the hottest man in the series, and the fact that he is now a woman in Bridgerton the show is not acceptable for them. There was a tweet, which is in Spanish, so I'm sorry if you can't read it, but translated, it says, they took away the hottest man in the series, and it's like a crying cat, which is so I think people are also really upset that because it's Michaela Sterling and she's now a woman in the series, they can't hypersexualize her in the way that they would with the other male love interests. That being the millions of edits of these actors shirtless, all their scenes of like them just doing male things. They want to be able to have a male character that they can sexualize and objectify on screen. As women, I think it's important that we also speak on and condemn the hypersexualization of men equally to when we criticize the hypersexualization of women in media, because I don't think it's great. I don't think it's good, especially when we get to a point of delusion where people are saying that certain actors are not hot enough to play a fictional character, someone that doesn't exist, by the way, someone that, if this was true to real life, all the scenes where we get of the male actors showing their booty cheeks, if it was real to life, we would see poop streaks. They would be dirty, they would be filthy, it would not be a fun time to see them. Okay, let's be honest, those people didn't bathe in the Regency era. So I don't want to hear that they're not hot enough. If anything, I don't think they're dirty enough. There were just so many mind-boggling tweets that I have to remind everyone that what you say on the internet lasts forever. There are many a hill to die on. And the things that some of these people are saying, oh my God, let's go through them. Let's go through some of my favorites. First of all, the fact that this person said that they scrapped Michael Sterling and Francesca for some diversity. Oh my God, that's a wild statement. That is something I beg you to reconsider saying on the internet, especially if you want a college career in the future. Someone said, it was my favorite book, but now it's nothing. I have always loved diversity in this show, but Francesca book was a lot different from others, and Michael had me on chokehold. IDK, how I should feel, but let's just hope for the best. I still have a hope for Sophie. Side note, because I don't want to get into an analysis of the book and like my thoughts about it. Spoiler alert, 0 out of 5. But God, someone included a delightful passage from the book, which I'll read now. Quote unquote, aka the best Bridgerton man. Oh, the bar is in hell because Michael wanted to impregnate her to trap her in marriage. And now she was essentially telling him that the only way she would marry him was for the sake of a baby. I see, he said, thinking his voice uncommonly calm, given the hot rush of fury surging through his blood. Fury he probably had no right to feel, but it was there nevertheless, and he was not enough of a gentleman to ignore it. It's too bad I promised not to ravish you this morning, then, he said dangerously, unable to resist a predatory smile. They describe him as predatory more often than I would like to admit in this book. It all goes back to the Omegaverse. Why do we want a predator? Oh my God. How do they say it? He mused, lightly scratching his jawline. Seal the deal, or at the very least, enjoy myself immensely while I try. But how nice for me, he cut in, that according to my watch, he was nearly enough to where his coat lay on the table to pluck his pocket watch out into the open. We only have 5 minutes to noon. You wouldn't, she whispered. He felt little humor, but he smiled all the same. You leave me little choice. Why? She asked, and he really didn't know what she was asking, but he answered her anyway, with the one bit of truth he couldn't escape. Because I have to. Is the best Bridgerton man in the room with us. The first section, I believe it's chapter 18 in the book, where they have their first intimate moment together, like where they're like sexually intimate. So he first asked her to marry him, and she said no. And then he decides to switch his strategy. Essentially, he says he can't appeal to her like logic, because if he gave her a chance to really think about it, she could convince herself that she doesn't like him. And he was like, I can't allow her to think logically. I must stigmatize her. I must get her to the point where she is most vulnerable, that being to a state of horniness where she cannot escape from, so that she will be entirely dependent on me and me providing her pleasure, that she can't say no to me. I also think it's funny, this is turning into my analysis anyway, throughout the parts where they're intimate with each other, the narrator, which again, Julia Quinn, the author, is constantly reaffirming to us that Francesca consented and that Michael would not do anything without her consent, which, you know, just as like a good note, just as like a good reminder to everyone, if you as the writer have to tell the reader that someone consented and constantly have to reiterate that fact, and we never see such consent being explicitly given by the character themselves, it doesn't do what you think it does. It doesn't convince me that he's not a predator. I think he is a predator. She says it so frequently to the point where I have to imagine someone read it and was like, it doesn't really sound like she wanted to like be intimate with him. And she was like, okay, well, let me just remind the reader over and over that she did want it so that they think it, and then we can all be okay with the fact that she didn't actually consent. Because the points in which he asks her, do you want me to stop, he never actually does. The fact that I have to explain consent, oh my God. What Michael does frequently is that he takes her silence as consent. That's not consent at all. I hate to see such a baddie get stigmatized so bad, and I hate to see that people are grasping for these crumbs of literature. Don't get me wrong, I like Bridgerton, the TV series. I fear I'll never be able to watch it again now knowing the source material. It's the most problematic thing I think I've ever read, and I didn't tell anyone this, but I read Ugly Love, and I did it because, again, I wanted to make a video talking about like spicy book talk and all that kind of stuff. I read part of it, and honestly, I think these books are worse than Colleen Hoover. But anyway, that's not what I'm talking about right now. So in conclusion, do men in the real world sometimes disappoint us? Yes. Is it okay to want to dive into a fantasy world where they make these elaborate declarations of love, where they're poets and they do all these things? Is that okay? Also, yes. Being delusional is okay in moderation. It's okay to like certain things in literature and not actually like them in real life. For example, my type in a fictional man is mean. I like when they're a little mean. Would I accept that in the real world? No. Absolutely not. The minute a man tried to speak to me the way that some of these men speak to women, it would be a black eye. It would be. I'm so sorry to say. Would I listen to a 1-hour loop of Gojo breathing? Yes. Would I listen to a 1-hour loop of a real life man breathing? No. No. I would never be down so bad for a man that I would do that. Overall, I don't think there's anything wrong with sex or these kinds of books particularly. However, I think there is a fine line to be drawn when it comes to having these books be popularized in media. Do I think it's necessarily overtaking the book space? Not really. I think that's a video for another time, but I think it's also just perpetuated by publishers and people in the industry that are constantly trying to sell these products, because if we have little like cute trends in certain online spaces, these people that are trying to sell us products will constantly run with it and flood our feeds with their products, so it makes people think that, yeah, whatever, like we're getting overrun. We're really not. Overall, don't be homophobic. It's June. It's okay to like these things in a fictional sense. It's okay to read and consume this kind of media, but don't apply this to the real world. That being, don't expect you're going to find Benedict Bridgerton, Colin Bridgerton. Don't expect you're going to find those men in real life. It's okay to have expectations and certain things you want out of a relationship, but there is a reason these men are fictional. You're never going to find exactly Colin Bridgerton. You might be able to find some of his traits, some things that you liked about him as a character in a romantic partner, and that's great. But there is a distinction between reality and fiction. And as much as people want to project themselves onto these relationships, I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think that there should be a good distinction about knowing that you are projecting yourself onto something that is fake, something that is fantasy, something that is just meant to be consumed for entertainment purposes. It's not meant to be your reality. I beg everyone, go outside, enjoy the fresh air, meet new people. Just to remind everyone, there are 8 seasons of Bridgerton, 8 books for Bridgerton. You are going to have 7 other heterosexual couples. Let us have one. If you're just watching Bridgerton so that you can project yourself onto characters and live out sexual fantasies, there are websites for that. The internet is so vast. You can enjoy content like that. But to demand and even like get angry, like genuinely angry about this kind of stuff is truly chronically online behavior. I'm so sorry to tell you. Because it's one thing to like just be blatantly homophobic, and it's another thing to try and pretend that you actually care about the plot lines, the storylines, the actual literature aspects of it, when you really don't, when you just want to have another person to project yourself onto so you can live out sexual fantasies. Again, I don't think this is everyone, and I think most people have a good grasp on their senses. I'm gonna show some of my favorite responses to these kinds of tweets. Straight women's inability to enjoy romance media that isn't specifically written for them to self-insert is truly sad. Maybe that's why the entirety of book talk and book Twitter is in the state that they are. I hear no lies. Sorry, babes, you can't masturbate to this season. Maybe after this one. Truly, I don't think that this is everyone that enjoys Bridgerton, but there are some like really weird things people had to say. Here's one tweet. I oddly feel betrayed. The actor for Michaela, quote unquote, is breathtaking, and I would have been happy to see her play anything else. I just can't find happiness in this. It feels as well like John and Francesca's love for one another simply does not matter anymore. I hate that feeling. These are fake people. This is a fake relationship. Goodbye, Michael Sterling. You live in my dreams. Girl, dreams or nightmares? They will completely ruin Francesca's season by changing characters. Why mess with the main characters? If you're adapting from the book, then don't change a good male character to female. Listen. Before I wrap up, I'm gonna say I think that there are some things that people kind of talk about when books get adapted into like movies or TV shows, and that is book accuracy. I think we can just get this out of the way if we can all acknowledge that book adaptations are not always true to the source material, because the reality is that a lot of these Hollywood people recognize that they can't make a series or a movie that's a perfect one-to-one adaptation of the book, because as much as that would appeal to fans of the series, they want to appeal to a wider audience. They want to get people that haven't read the books to still enjoy the movie or the TV show. I mean, me personally, I never read Bridgerton, but the show appealed to me as someone that wasn't a fan because of the way it was shot, the love stories. I didn't have to understand or have read the books to still enjoy the series, and that's what all these producers and film people want. There are some things that have to be adapted truthful to the book, and those are things that are essential to the specific characters and or the plot. For example, Harry Potter is often revered as a wonderful book to movie adaptation, very truthful to the source material. Not a lot of people complained about the adaptations or the decisions that they made in the film because they felt that it still held the entirety of the book and it was still very true to the original source material. Percy Jackson, the movie adaptation, people were really upset over something that seemed really minuscule, and that being Annabeth's hair color. The actress for Annabeth in the first movie didn't have blonde hair, and a lot of people were really upset about it. Again, this could be seen as a very minuscule kind of criticism for the movie. I think one of the reasons people were so upset is because it was a really easy change to make. People saw it as something like bare minimum that they had to do. Like, Annabeth was described as blonde, she should be blonde, and the fact that they didn't make her blonde for the entire movie was like, how did you miss that detail? B, because Annabeth's character in the book, the reason she is blonde is meant to subvert the dumb blonde stereotype. Annabeth is someone that is incredibly intelligent, very logical, and just she is the mega mind of the Percy Jackson series. She's incredibly intelligent. So the fact that she is blonde is meant to subvert that stereotype. So the fact that she wasn't in the movie wasn't true to her character and really overlooked a significant part of who her character is. Certain criticisms in terms of how books are adapted into media, some of that is valid. This is not. Nothing about Michael's character is changed at all if she is a woman. I'm so sorry to tell you that. I really am. This is really so ridiculous to have to say in this good year of 2024. I'm gonna just leave y'all with this last tweet. This truly encompasses the energy that we just have to give back to all these homophobes on Twitter and people that are super upset about Michaela Sterling. That being, it makes perfect sense that Michael Sterling is Michaela Sterling in the show. There's no way a man could ever deliver what Michael Sterling was in the books. Only a woman can serve like this. With that being said, that's it. That's the end of the video. I'm tired of talking about this. I can't believe this is something that we actually had to address in this good year of 2024 and in this good month of Pride. Jesus Christ. It's not that serious, guys. You're gonna watch the show no matter what. I'm so sorry to tell you, you're gonna tune in. You are. I feel so bad. I feel like the Bridgerton showrunners probably split it up between May and June so we could have this glorious moment for June, that this would be the moment of Pride, and it's been overrun by all these homophobes. I'm so sorry. My throat is literally trashed. I ran out of water in the first 10 minutes of filming. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have read Bridgerton and or watched the series, let me know what you think. What are your thoughts of the gender bent Michael Sterling? Are you excited for Michaela Sterling? I know I am. I'm so excited for all the people that think that she's his twin and they still holding out hope that Michael is gonna come back. Bro, please. Just a reminder, did you know that all the videos that I'm making in the month of June and all the ad revenue I'm getting in the month of June is going to be donated? So by watching this video, you are directly contributing to our donation pool for organizations such as Doctors Without Borders, Operation Olive Branch, the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, and a charity of your choice. You can go vote in my community post, which I will show right here. Please do so. But we're already making considerable headway. I am very excited. And at the end of the month, I'm going to tell everyone how much we raised, and I'll be making the donations. So it'll be a lot of fun. We're doing good work out here. We're talking about drama on Twitter for a good purpose. Anyway, be sure to follow me on all my social media at Listen to Kristen on Instagram and TikTok. I post some fun stuff there sometimes. Stay up to date with your favorite YouTuber, because yes, I'm your favorite YouTuber. Maybe not after this video. I anticipate that I'm going to get a lot of people in my comments with a lot of things to say, which is fine. I'm not someone that won't entertain good and substantial counter arguments. If you have any ideas about like how you think the series might take on this new character, I'm excited to hear about it. Again, I don't endorse and I won't entertain any kind of hate. Absolutely none. If you want to criticize me and the way I address this topic, that's fine. I don't care. I will not hear any of the homophobia in this beautiful month of June. That's it. I'm very tired. I feel like I've gotten a lot of work done. I think I should be applauded for my efforts, because I not only had to go to book Twitter, I had to read a Bridgerton book. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. I can't be recording this many controversial videos. I'm tired of fighting for my life, but someone must. All right, you heard me. Go slay another day. I will not take no for an answer. Yeah, that's it.